Hello and welcome to this episode of the Cancer Diaries from Wessex Cancer Trust. This series has been put together for Wessex Cancer Trust's ActionMan campaign. ActionMan is a men's health campaign which encourages men to be aware of the signs and symptoms of cancer and to contact their GP if they have any concerns. This series is an opportunity to hear from a number of men about their experiences of cancer, but also to take a deeper look at some of the issues around men talking to their GP and what needs to happen for them to feel a little bit easier about opening up. Today, we're talking to Ken Ebbens, who's a proofreader in the life insurance market, and Ken is also chair of our Wessex Cancer Trust ActionMan Committee. Hello, Ken. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Good morning. You're welcome.
Thank you. If we could just start by just talking a little bit about your experience of cancer.
Yeah, first of all, I have to say I'm one of the very fortunate 50% who personally have never had cancer, to my knowledge. My brother-in-law died of it, my sister, my my father-in-law. It's the usual stuff. We all know people who have, friends, partners of friends, wives, husbands of friends. So it's been around my life like it has the vast majority of people. I've been involved with Wessex Cancer Trust for about 20 years. When I was at the Chamber of Commerce, the only year I had out of the life insurance industry, 20 years ago, and it introduced me into just what wonderful work charities do, about the need for it. And cancer, I believe there's over 200 types of it now. It was the big C in those days. You never mentioned it, and to demystify it was one of the things that I thought was a really good thing to try and help with. With Wessex Cancer, we did start a choir for people affected by cancer. So I became surrounded by people who have survived cancer. Only one of our members has passed away. He had to stop singing because he had stomach cancer and he just couldn't do it. So I've heard their stories, and if I have the time for over 30 seconds, one of our ladies, if you think of Barbara Windsor, that's the kind of person she comes across as. Bubbly, comes in the room, lights up the room. She's had cancer twice. Her husband just got over cancer, and her 28-year-old daughter died of cancer. And yet nobody would know that. And so she's been through all that suffering, and yet she comes across as someone who is, and I wanted to know more how people can do that. I have no idea how people can do that. So being part of a choir for people directly affected by cancer, has really opened it up for me. It's made me more determined that in whatever small way I can, to try and help people deal with it, and not just the people themselves, but their loved ones, the carers, because in a way it's harder for them in one respect, because the person who has the disease, there is a path laid out, but for the person who is helping, really no such path exists, because it's very different, and it's 24/7. Nothing is greater than the pain of somebody with cancer. The pain of the person trying to help them isn't far behind.
I think in your experience, you've come into contact with lots of people who have had cancer. And I think, we know at Wessex Cancer Trust that every person's journey through cancer is different. Everyone has a different experience and a different way of dealing with it. So just going back to sort of before a cancer diagnosis, there could be many feelings that men have got about how they feel about any changes to their body. Why do you think some men don't go to the doctor if they think there might be something wrong with them?
Generational, and there seems to be a reluctance. It's not a manly thing to do. There's an old saying: "Men don't cry." Believe me, when you get to my age, we do. I can never get past the end of ET, for example. So there are all sorts of things that well, the emotions. And a lot of people I know, funny enough, a lot of people I know of my age, as we get older, the ability to react emotionally increases. Now, whether it's to do with mortality, I don't know. None of us actually know. But it's increasing. But this thing about men don't cry is one of the biggest loads of rubbish you'll ever come across. But it has perpetuated that men don't cry. It's very strong for a man to be, or I did put my head in the sand, it would go away. If I can give you an example of myself, I learned a long time ago that lumps are either cancer or they're benign. If they're benign, they're not cancer. So I've had a lump in a stomach for about 40 years now, but I keep an eye. I've always kept an eye on it because
Okay.
I've always wanted to know if I've got a problem. So I fall into that minority of men who are quite happy to check, ask. My GP would tell you. I think my notes would say how often I have asked where if I felt, excuse me, a small change. Because it, if you know what you're facing, you have half a chance.
Mm.
If you haven't got a clue what you're facing, what are you going to do? And too many men, they just fall into this thing about it's not for us. We're a man. We don't do that sort of thing.
Mm.
And if Action Man can do anything, excuse me, if Action Man can do anything, it's to try and help break down that myth, that barrier. It
Mm.
affects men as just as it affects women. In fact, as you and I both know, Sam, it affects
Mm.
men worse.
Mm. Mm.
Statistically, it affects
Statistically,
men
yes.
worse. And
Yeah.
part of that is because they ignore it. Therefore, it's caught later if it's caught at all. If it's caught later, your chances plummet. And
Mm.
the statistics just show that up.
Mm. So what do you think would help more men go to the doctor if they think there's something not normal for them?
Peer pressure. I think peer pressure is it's a phrase that has a negative and a positive side to it.
Mm.
Peer pressure, lemmings have peer pressure. One lemming jumps off a cliff, the rest follow. Take the
Mm.
opposite of that. If you see somebody who climbs a mountain, I can climb it.
Mm.
So what I think if you have other men showing that they're prepared to put their hands up, which hopefully is what Paul and Guy and Philip and Chris
Mm.
and myself and other men involved in this committee, we're all putting our hands up from different positions within the cancer story.
Mm.
If we can do it, why can't you? We're all individuals. We're all come from different walks of life. Some of us are more gregarious than others. Some of us are shyer than others within the committee. The committee's got actually quite a good blend of the different types of man you can get on the
Yeah.
face of it, and yet we're all prepared to put our hands up. And I think it's that peer pressure. Put your hands up. If we can do it, you can do it. It's so repeated in history about starting a movement, starting a march. The Pied Piper starts with one, and then before you know it, he's got a whole series of and how many rats following along. People will follow. It's one of the few occasions for me personally where the sheep mentality becomes a positive.
Mm.
If I can do it, you can do it. Um,
Mm.
Show people the statistics. Now, statistics. What's the expression? Lies, damn lies, and statistics. Now, I've worked
Mm.
with statistics all my life, being in life assurance. And you take the figures 1 and 1. 1 and 1 equals 2 or 11, depends how you use the numbers.
Mm.
But given the right statistic, that they don't lie. If it says that 72% of men die when only 50% of women do, I don't see how you can say they must be wrong. The error of judgment, the rounding error within those percentages are far too small for it to be wrong.
Mm.
So you look at the statistics. But I'm going back to, and throughout this interview, I might keep referring to the carers side, something I feel
Mhm.
desperately passionate about.
Yeah.
What's the effect? Trying to explain to men it's not about you. It's about
Mm.
you and it's the people who are left behind or the people who have to help you through. And I'll use the word selfish. If men are too selfish to look after themselves, please don't be too selfish to make life that much worse for your life partner or your family. And I
Mm.
do think that to show that might help. We're not going to help every man. You are always going to get those men who say, not for me. It will never happen to me. I don't need that. It's not that. One or two could have proper reasons that they're naturally scared. They might have had a very bad experience in the past that puts them off. And those are all individual things that hopefully good people in the medical profession will be able to help allay those fears. But they're
Mm.
individualistic. In general terms, we want to try and get across to men it's not just about you. And I do think that the men can have a selfish streak. Of course,
Okay.
so can women. But I would say in this context, more men, it's all about me. I'm not.
Mm.
I don't want to find out. Therefore, I'm not worried about people either side of me. And I
Mm.
do think if we can get that message across, hopefully it'll make some men think twice.
Mm. I think that's a really good point about, how are people seen in society? Maybe it's a stereotype, but what does the word masculinity mean to you?
It's never a word that's really bothered me in the past. I've never thought
Yeah.
about it, to be honest
Yeah.
with you.
Mm.
Masculinity, I think, has become a pejorative term. In other words, people use it for a negative reason.
Yeah.
Masculinity is used when men are paid more than women, or masculinity is because men are more powerful, or whether you get horrible situations. Masculinity to me is just being a man is being a proper person.
Mm.
Being a woman is being a proper person. Words like masculinity for me, if I could say it, um, they they mask and cloud the real problem.
Mm.
It's there. It's a barrier in itself. Masculinity is used for me. It's used to describe somebody who goes down the pub and can as a rite of passage, can drink 8 pints of lager, then 3 whiskies, like a rites of passage.
Mm.
That's not me. And
Mm.
does that mean I'm not masculine? Well, um, yes, I am masculine, but not in that way.
Mm.
Masculinity should simply be traits men have, traits women have. Um, there are different traits for the two different species of humankind, and that's all it should really be about. It's used in the it's far too often used in a negative way. Personally, I'd like to see it not used at all.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
just a word. It's just a reference word rather than a word used to describe.
Mm.
It's a barrier. You need to get rid of that idea about masculinity. It's got nothing to do with proving yourself. It's about being a proper person. Go back to my previous answer. It's about not only looking after yourself, it's looking after your family, it's looking after your carers, looking after your friends. It's also looking after the NHS, which is
Mm.
everybody said is everybody's church of
Mm.
choice.
Mm.
So everybody who doesn't look after themselves, the cost of some of these procedures add it up. That selfishness comes with a price.
Mm.
So let's try and see whether we can help all across the board. So masculinity, I see as a big barrier.
Mm.
Let's try and not have the word used in the way it is used.
Mm. And
If that answers the question.
do you think there's a fear of going, the physical act of going to the to see your GP, to walking into the doctor's surgery?
I think it's all linked together because I've got the great fortune of being involved with one of the vaccination hubs, and I saw a young lady come in last week, and she was in terror,
Mm.
and I was taken aback by how genuinely afraid she was of
Mm.
having the needle. Why do I explain it about a woman? Because it doesn't have to be a man who's afraid of going in.
Mm.
Women are just as afraid for different reasons. Sometimes you don't want the result of the test
Mm.
because you're worried about what's going to happen. But if you don't get the test and you don't get the test results, what can you do to try and help yourself?
Mm.
Sorry, excuse me. I do think that there is this build up. This is where the peer pressure works again. There is this build up of it's a sign of weakness to go and ask somebody about something. Why can't you, a man, deal with it yourself? That's what men have done in the old days. Well, that may be why they died at 45 then.
Yeah.
If you look at the age now, well, I think the average age of the age, I think, is 78 or 79 for men in this country at the moment.
Mm.
There is a reason why it's double what it was 100 years ago. And
Mm.
part of that is knowledge. Part of that
Mm.
is understanding.
Mm.
Um, so there has been this myth build up that if you're happy to go, if like myself, I'm quite happy to say I wear my information on my sleeve.
Mm.
People want to talk to me about the odd thing that I have to deal with, then I'm very happy to talk about it.
Mm.
I have learned so much from a friend who had a stroke. He
Mm.
talks to me about it. I've learned a heck of a lot from him I didn't know before. My dad was diabetic. I have a pretty good layman's knowledge of diabetes because I was witness it.
Mm.
I was around it. So I
Mm.
also know what to look for. And I do think this fear is a huge barrier to get down. And the more men we say, I'm going to go in there, you know,
Mm.
let's 20 of us march into the and say, we want to be checked out.
Yeah.
Get the cameras there. We want to be checked out. Come and join our army. It's good fun, actually. Come in, have a chat with a nice GP, have a chat to the receptionist. Come and have a look around. The surgery's laid out really nice. It's not an area of warfare.
No.
And it's that psyche. It's trying to get through that a surgery is a means to try and help you have a better life, be able to enjoy your grandchildren. I'm
Mm.
pretty fit for my age, and I feel blessed that I've got a 13-year-old gorgeous granddaughter, and I can do
Mm.
everything with her at the moment.
Mm. Mm.
That's because I'm one of those who have tried my best, not always failing. If you see my weight during lockdown, you'll know that. But I've tried my best to be as fit as I can so I can enjoy my granddaughter's growing as a beautiful teenage girl.
Mm.
So it's that's sort of an incentive. And I think the other thing about men is you continue to look for those incentives. And for me, I'm getting a growing number of people now who are saying, I'm watching my health because I want to see my granddaughter grow up.
Yeah.
And you need those incentives. So I think for men that you need to find a way of saying to them, going to the doctors is a sign of strength, not weakness. Saying
Mm,
sorry is the biggest sign of strength anybody can say, because you're
mm,
admitting you did something wrong.
mm.
And I would say so many men can't say sorry.
No.
So many. And it's getting that negativity out of the way.
Mm. That's really
We're
interesting.
not going to get everybody.
Mm. So how do you think Action Man will change things? What needs to happen, and how can Action Man help?
Um, I've written a note down here with 4 E's:
Okay.
emphasis, explain, encourage, and empower.
Mm,
And I think I was trying to think of a way of summarizing what Action Man can do. It emphasizes that the statistics for men is bad compared to
mm,
women. It simply is. Um, I think you'll find um, in almost every outcome that I've read, the outcome for females is better. There has to be a reason. It's not just genetics. There has
mm,
to be a reason for that. Explain. To be fair, and I use the word ignorance in its proper sense, there's a lot of people who are ignorant about what to look for and what it means.
mm,
And therefore you educate. And I think the education is you can say another E, explain or educate. You can put the two together if you like.
mm,
It's to trying to make people aware. And the explaining and the education is about, through Action Man, hopefully, is to get people to see that there is a way forward that you don't have to be scared of. And
mm,
this is why. So again, if I may go back to myself, I found this lump in my stomach. The ongoing conversation I have with my GP, when I say ongoing, it's every now and again, is if I sense a change, if there's suddenly a pain there, or I sense it's ingrown, or I sense it's moved, give me a ring and we'll have
mm,
a look at it.
mm,
And because he explained to me what to look for, therefore I understood it, therefore I just keep an eye on it.
mm,
The encourage is the obvious thing. You just think, no, we want men to just go, just ask.
mm,
You know, I'm on the patient group of my surgery. I know it's busy time for GPs. I know they're under the cosh with the vaccine. I know that they've got there's a lot of build up and worry over the build up of all sorts of different ailments that people haven't gone through to.
mm,
I can say with 100% certainty, they want people to come forward, because at the end of the day, even if they've got to struggle to fit you in, it's going to save them time and money and lives further down the line.
mm,
And they want that problem. They want the problem of fitting you in. What they don't want is to find you 6 months later where the conversation will take a more sinister turn.
mm,
Not always, but often. And I think the encouragement is to say, help yourself at the earliest possible point. And the empowerment is you're looking after yourself.
mm,
No, none of us like being told what to do.
mm. No.
Um, none of us, all of us would prefer to be our own boss, our own manager. All of us would prefer to be able to do what we want, and we have the right and we have the ability to do whatever we want. So this is to say to men, empower, look after your health. Don't rely on your wife or partner to nag you or to keep on at you or to just to however that conversation goes.
Mm,
Do it yourself.
mm,
Feel empowered. It's a positivity. It shows a strength. And if
mm,
there's one thing that a lot of men love is to be told you're showing you're very strong.
mm, mm. I think that's a
So,
good point. Just talking about encouragement, we've said before in our meetings, and I know from people I've spoken to who've kindly shared their stories that sometimes they've really only been encouraged to go to the doctor after their partner or another
mhm.
female in their life has said you've got to go to the doctor. I want you to go. What do you think a woman's role in the Action Man campaign could be?
um, am I allowed to draw a silly analogy?
Yes, of
At
course.
the moment, I've got wife, daughter, and granddaughter nagging at me about getting my hair cut. Now, obviously, we're in lockdown, therefore, this is obviously filmed at a certain point in time.
Yes.
So, in my head, I'm going to have to get my hair done at the earliest point. Would I have done if they hadn't mentioned anything? Probably not.
Mm,
Now, that's a very, very basic, silly example compared to something as serious as cancer, but I think the principle is sound. If if it's a case of I've really, my tummy's really hurting, or I've got this pain in my chest, or a pain in the back.
mm,
Now, pain in the back can simply be like I do. You slouch in a chair and you get up at the wrong angle, and suddenly your muscles say that was a silly thing to do.
mm,
But a pain in the back can also might be something sinister. You just
mm.
don't know. I'm
No.
not a doctor. You're not a doctor. So therefore, we need
Mm,
to ask the question.
mm,
Um, and I think that when I use the word nag, now nag is viewed as a negative way of expressing things. I actually think it's the right word here because
mm,
it means to keep on at.
mm,
And I do think it's the partner's role to keep on at the other one, to say you've really got to look after yourself for your sake, for my sake, for your children's sake, for your mother and father's sake. Because don't forget, there must be how many people who suffer in cancer who've got caring responsibilities. So it's not. It is all about the whole circle of the family, upwards, sideways, and downwards.
mm,
And caring responsibilities are huge. If you think in Portsmouth, 3 years ago there were 300 under 16-year-olds who were official carers,
yes.
and there were three who were age 5 officially on the books.
Wow.
All of them will be affected by an adult who is ill. Obviously, in a lot of cases, it's absolutely no fault and there's nothing you can do. Sometimes these things just hit you like a train without any warning,
Mm,
and you've only got the utmost sympathy. But I also know in some instances there were preventable reasons as well. I know that because of the studies, because when
mm,
I was involved before. So it's the preventability that we're stressing. You can't stop cancer. There are times when people are going to get cancer. There was this whole thing about smoking and cancer. Now, what I was told when I was doing my life assurance studies was smoking and lung cancer. If you smoke, doesn't mean you'll get lung cancer. It means it
mm,
increases the chances.
mm,
If you don't smoke, doesn't mean you won't get lung cancer.
mm,
It just means it decreases the chances.
mm,
And that is about preventability. And what the ActionMan is all about is preventability. And the wives, the partners, the life partners, and the women in the life are very good at pointing out the obvious in a correct way.
mm,
I've got to say, I'm glad my wife's not here listen to me say this, but she gets it right a lot more than she gets it wrong.
mm,
And I do think it's important that you're encouraged. This goes back to the encouragement. So the women in the E for encouragement is where the wife, the woman, the female comes into play in a big, big way for me. And
mm,
therefore, this campaign is aimed at men and women. And
mm,
what we're looking for is is the women in the lives, and it could be a friend. It doesn't have to be a partner, because there are people who are single who've got very close friends who are females
mm,
or men. It doesn't matter. But we're looking at the life partner, which is predominantly female for men. So you're looking at both, because you need one to help the other, and the other one, if the other one can't do it on their own.
mm,
And we also need the help of the wives of the women
mm,
to monitor, to make sure. It's one thing if you go to a doctor, what if you don't follow through? What if you
mm,
don't follow it up? A friend of mine lost a wife and a girlfriend to breast cancer. At the age of 60, he did his bowel cancer check. He's a year older than me. Well, playing badminton, 62. Said to him, "Oh, you got your check come through. I can't be bothered. I don't get it."
mm,
What's the mindset in that? If ever there
mm,
was somebody with a red light saying every check I can that's reasonable, I'll do.
mm, mm,
How can you change that mindset?
mm,
I don't know. So
no.
one of those few occasions, I didn't know what to say to him. I genuinely didn't know what to say. I didn't want to
Mm,
upset him, but I was thinking, I don't get it. I still don't get it to this day.
mm,
So the women in the Action Man are hugely important,
mm,
hugely important. So
mm,
women's groups and things like this, we're going to go to them and ask if they can help,
mm, mm.
and we'll see what the feedback is.
Mm. I think it's worth saying as well, we've touched on the impact on carers, and
Yeah,
then they might have an encouragement to go to the doctor, but also the impact that it could, a cancer diagnosis could have on them as well. And it's worth saying that at Wessex Cancer Trust, we provide support for anyone that's going through a cancer diagnosis, treatment, recovery, whether that's the person themselves, the patient, or for a loved one as well. And that impact can be particularly tough on a carer, can't it, Ken?
Well, I know I've not cared for someone with cancer per se, because my father-in-law had cancer, but he also had dementia. That was the main purpose that we were caring for him. My wife and I went on honeymoon, and we couldn't get him out of our head. Even in Cuba, we were still thinking, what's he doing?
Yeah.
It's 24/7, 7
Yes.
days a week, 365, 366 days a year is what people who haven't been carers cannot understand. You cannot understand it. And about how strong you are, and I view myself as a pretty strong individual, it gets you. And you're never off guard. You're never off. Sorry, you are off guard. You're never off duty. You're on duty the whole. You never properly relax. It was really quite sad. My mother-in-law passed away on Boxing Day, and we went home from the hospital. Got home at 3 in the morning. The phone went, and both my wife and I leapt out of bed and said, "I wonder what she wants now." And it was an automatic reflex reaction because you're always a carer.
Yeah.
You're always a carer, and I do think that's such an important part of it. Is the carers side, whoever they may be, wife, daughter, brother, father, friend, professional carer, whoever they may be, they have a big part to play in this. Because we actually would like men not to have a carer at all. We want that. We don't want, or we want those with carers not to go too far down the route where there's no coming back.
No.
It's all about trying to get the right people to help encourage, to help empower, to help explain. And that's what we're here to try and do, I think.
So, Ken, if a friend confided in you that they thought something might be up, what would you encourage them to do?
I think you probably gather from the last 20 minutes exactly what I would say. Yeah, it is. It's what I do. When people confide, absolutely. I'm not a hypocrite. I'm a lot of things. I'm not a hypocrite. You go and deal with it. You address it. You go and deal with it. You offer to help. And I think the important thing, if a friend came to me and said, I've got a problem, the easiest thing and the worst thing to do is say, do this, do that. Oh, I'm just going out now.
Yeah.
It's do this, do that. Can I come and help you? What do you need? Do you want me to come with you? Would you like, always come and talk to me if you want to talk to somebody who's fairly neutral in all this. It's to encourage, and I'll go back to the ease again. Sorry, I just go back to those, encourage and explain, but also empower them. Say to them, it's them. To try and say to a friend, if you don't help yourself, until you help yourself first, it's very hard for anybody else to be able to help you. And on the assumption that 99.99% of people want to get better, then surely having a friend who can say, come on in, let's face up. You're not on your own. You don't have to be on your own. I'm happy to do what I can to walk with you. And I do think that's important. Excuse me. It's very easy to say things to people, and then the wrong thing is simply say, right, let me know how it goes next month. Just give us a shout. The better thing to do is, this is what I would do. This is all what I have done. This is how I would go about it. If you need any help, I'll do what I can. Let me know. Anything, and that I think is the confidence side. I do think confidence plays an awful lot part of it as well. It's confidence. I think I despair when I see people hammering the National Health Service in all its different guises with bad information. The NHS is prone to mistakes and errors, like all of us are, like everybody else is, and we're all very happy to accept that on the basis that Queen Alexandra Hospital, I would say, from my own personal experience over the last 20 years, probably gets about 90-95%, if not more, correct. That's a hell of an achievement when you're dealing with 7,000 people across the whole of Hampshire. But what do you ever hear about? The 1 or 2 or 3% that goes wrong.
Yeah.
So the confidence to go to these people. And I think where we can be of help is that everybody involved with this committee has had a lot of experience from very different angles of the National Health Service in all its guises. And we can give testimony to why it's right to trust these people. And I would trust myself I trust my audiologist because my hearing is a slight issue. I trust my optician to help me and the hospital with a torn retina in the past. I will trust my GP.
Mm,
I've taken my GP's instructions on any number of things, and so far they've never been proven wrong.
mm,
And
mm,
it's a question of trust. And I think what we
mm,
can try and do is try and engender the feeling of trust about going to your doctor. You
mm,
are going to get the right treatment. You are going to get the right diagnosis. You are going to be given the right sort of help.
mm,
And Wessex Cancer Trust are one of those fabulous charities that should never exist in reality, but thank God it does. Well, it
mm,
shouldn't really in an
mm,
ideal world,
mm,
but thank goodness it does,
mm.
because you're there to be that additional help,
Yes.
that expertise that can able to hold the person's hand better possibly than people like myself on a with a friend, because obviously we all have our own lives around. So
Mm,
it's the whole package.
mm,
So for me,
mm,
if someone came to me and said I've got a problem, then I would try and explore with them the best way to try and deal with it and
mm,
be supportive
mm,
to the best of my ability.
mm. So we've talked about the Action Man campaign is something that is being run by um, or being led by a committee with
Yeah,
people who have come from all different sort of backgrounds and have different experiences of cancer. It's sort of independent of the Wessex Cancer Trust team in a way, but working very closely alongside each other. How can people get involved in Action Man if they want to?
the biggest benefit that people can do, men and women, is act as a conduit, be a
Mm,
gateway for us.
mm-hmm,
Pick up the message, come and find out more. Um, if you have a committee of 150 people, I don't quite think it's going to work well.
mm.
And I'd like to see the length of your minutes if that was the case. Um, so the committee size we have is not unreasonable.
Mm,
There's always room for one or two more people if they have the time, the interest, um, the understanding, and the ideas. So
mm,
always happy to hear from people. But I think the biggest thing people can do is act as gatekeepers,
mm,
gate openers, I should say,
mm,
is we need to get to as many groups as we possibly can, not to tick a box. I think this has to be stressed. The easiest thing in the world is to, let's say, Portsmouth City has got 250,000 people, for sake of argument. Let's just say we flood it with a
mm,
leaflet through every letterbox. Tick a box. We've got to 250,000 people. No, you haven't, because how many of them actually read it?
mm,
Probably 2,000 out of 250,000. So ticking a box to say numbers is arguably the easiest thing in the world to do, and it proves
mm,
nothing. What we need to do is get through to groups, is to get through to um, where men are, where the ladies are, put them together, and then try and start getting responses. Um, how do I think Action Man will be viewed as a success? I have a simple view. My view is that anything like Action Man, you start off with one.
mm,
Let's try and find one. Let's try and find the first person we can help. Let's
mm,
try and find the first man whose life we can encourage to take a different path.
mm.
You and I were talking before this about sliding doors, and it really is a sliding doors situation.
Yes.
Which path are you going to take? You're going to jump on that train, or you're going to stay off the train. And what we want them to do is jump on the Action Man train that takes you to a destination where you've got half a chance.
Mm,
Where the odds are, if you don't get on that train, it's less than half a chance.
mm,
So what we're trying to get is um, encourage people to listen, to pass on, to report back. Let's get that one person, and then let's exponentially grow that. One can become 11, 11 can become 111, and so on.
mm,
And I think that exponential rise is what all campaigns seek to achieve. Once you get the one on board, that's very important to get the first one. And I do think that sometimes you can make the mistake of trying to achieve a million. No,
mm,
let's get the one and build on. Let's try and get the first one in and clocked away, and
mm,
then we will continue to move on from there. So everybody who's either listening to this or reads, we want you to be gatekeepers, please.
mm,
And if you want to do more, then if there's room and we feel that there is scope to include other people, obviously we'll be silly not to listen. And please feel free to come forward and offer your services. Volunteers are always welcome because people are doing it for the right reason.
mm,
What it used to say about conscripts and volunteers? One volunteer is worth 100 conscripts,
mm,
and I do think that's true because
mm,
it shows intent, and intent's the most important thing. So
mm,
what people can do for me is to be those gate openers.
mm,
Allow us to get through to those groups of people. My surgery, 20,000 people. They've already said that they're happy to put it through all their social media, through their website, through things like this. So straight away, I don't know what the mix between male and female is. If it reflects the country, then 9 or 10,000 will be men. So hopefully that's a starting point, at least to get the information out there. Maybe we'll pick one up from that. If every surgery's got 10 or 20,000, all you need is one from each surgery to start it all off with, and then you can build up from there. And that's just surgeries. And there's awful, I can comment on Portsmouth and where a lot of the groups are, and other areas in the Wessex region. There must be the similar groups in Southampton, in Basingstoke, in Bournemouth, and whatever the Wessex region is. So please help us be the gate openers. Allow us in, make the point, and then see if we can persuade. Because the stats show it's definitely necessary. And I would say finally for me, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be chairman of a group of interesting individuals. We're all different. Everyone's got a very different background. And what I like about it is every single person's doing it for exactly the right reason. And, we have people who have having a really tough time. We've got people who have managed to come through it. We've got other people who've been surrounded by it. It's a good mix. And I think we got a young lad in his early 20s has come on board, because that's a very important perspective. Far too many people forget that cancer doesn't just discriminate between male or female, white, black, green, blue, Martian, earthling or not. It also doesn't discriminate between age.
No.
One of the scariest things is a child born with cancer. I saw brain tumor research university. The professor showed us a scan of a fetus with a brain tumor.
Goodness.
That's scary.
It is really scary.
So if you align brain tumor with brain cancer, because the two things are viewed the same by different people, there is no age barrier.
No.
So we're off to try and get across to as many people as possible.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay.
You're
very welcome.
It's been a privilege to talk to you, and thank you for being so honest and giving so many insights. And your experiences will be really valuable. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I hope it's been of some help to somebody.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure it will. Well, we hope you found this episode insightful and helpful. And don't forget, if you need any more information about the signs and symptoms of cancer, or would appreciate some support, please head to www.actionman.wessexcancer.org.uk. Thank you.